Hello everyone, it's great seeing you again, and thanks for joining us for Alaska weather on this Monday, 21st day of December 2020. Actually, shortest day of the year now, with the winter solstice having occurred at 1:02 a.m. earlier this morning. And shortest day of the year, so after kind of a pause, they'll start increasing. Day lengths get longer coming up now. Anyway, moving on to the hazardous weather graphic. Big storm coming up and a lot of illuminated areas there scattered around, kind of broken up. Starting the panhandle there for the Juneau area and that whole highlighted zone there on up into Lynn Canal there. That's a high wind watch out for tomorrow night, I believe, or tomorrow night, overnight tomorrow night. And also for the eastern North Gulf Coast Yakutat, that'll kick into effect a little sooner than the one over toward Juneau with the front moving through. But that's high wind watches there, possible gusts to 60 miles an hour as a weakening front moves into the area, both those areas. Otherwise, tonight and into tomorrow, we've got a high wind warning out for the Kenai Peninsula, Turnagain Arm, and Anchorage area, higher elevations, looking for winds of anywhere from, 60 to 80 miles per hour with gusts to 115 miles an hour in the higher elevations of East Anchorage, Chugach Mountains, Chugach State Park, and Turnagain Arm. Again, that's 115 miles an hour. And could be some blizzard conditions also on the Kenai Peninsula later tonight, early tomorrow, if temperatures stay below freezing and the snow moves in and be blowing around and sees visibility is less than a quarter mile with those winds. High wind warning out for the Alaska Range, again for later tonight and through tomorrow, possibly even into tomorrow night, for gusts of 70 miles an hour or so. 75 there, and that extends not into the northern Kuskokwim Valley. That's more toward the eastern part of that zone there. So McGrath and Nikolai are not in the high wind warning area there. That's over toward the Alaska Range. And a winter storm warning out for the Grayling area, with the storm coming in for snow and blowing snow, 5 to 7 inches, gusts to possibly 60 miles an hour. Blizzard warning out for the Yukon Delta, especially along the coast and eastern Norton Sound, southern coast of the Seward Peninsula up to the Bering Strait and St. Lawrence Island, also with Gamble now reporting north to northeast winds gusting 56 miles per hour with heavy snow and 1/4 mile visibilities there. And so that's going to be going on throughout the night tonight and into tomorrow. And then the winter weather advisory there for the Galena area, and then winter storm watches out for the interior areas of the Seward Peninsula, and that goes up the northwest coast there. Wind chill warnings out for the Kobuk Valley, Noatak Valley for tonight. And also wind chill warnings continue advisories, wind chill advisories for the Kobuk Valley, Noatak Valley, all of the Arctic coast, and the eastern North Slope, northeastern Brooks Range area for wind chills 40 to 55 degrees below zero with gusty winds. And now for the satellite imagery, you can see low pressure there west of the Pribilof Islands, one low center pulling up, and then basically a frontal boundary with a lot of moisture extending down west of Nunivak Island, west of the Alaska Peninsula there, with other low center developing right around the Fox Islands, or moving northward there. And that's spreading wind and rain into Kodiak Island with winds picking up to about, gusts at Sitkinak, picking up 40 to 50 miles an hour this afternoon, with about 2/3 of an inch of rain having fallen in the last 12 hours at Kodiak State Airport, and about 8/10 of an inch falling Cape Newenham there, with 40 to 60 mile an hour wind gusts along the southwest coast. And clouds, mid and high level clouds, moving into south central Alaska and back up along the lower Yukon River Valley areas and into the still well below zero, about 14 below at Fairbanks currently. They've got light winds up there. North Slope even colder, with Umiat Airfield sitting at 42 degrees below zero at 3 p.m. this afternoon. Otherwise, the Panhandle had some lingering rain and snow showers going on, not too heavy, about 2/10 of an inch at Sitka was one of the heavier amounts there. And rolling that through again, you can see the clouds rolling right up into St. Lawrence Island with the snow, heavy snow and blowing snow going on there, heavy wind. And that will be moving on to the Seward Peninsula and pushing eastward as well, but a good surge of warm air also coming up on those southerly winds. And that's, of course, rain that's spilling into the Bristol Bay area, and mixture in advance of that. I don't think freezing rain will be that much of a factor there. It'll probably switch out, change over pretty quickly. But snow on the increase, moisture on the increase here, Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula area there throughout the day today, especially for tonight, along with the winds coming up. McHugh Creek seeing gusts 40 miles an hour out of the east, with mixture of precipitation already going on there, temperatures in the lower 30s. And again, for the Panhandle, much drier conditions, but still some lingering showers. Those will continue to diminish. And light winds and well below zero up over the central eastern interior all the way out to the Arctic coast. And then that 950 millibar low, that sort of the parent low there out in the south central Bering Sea, kept it breezy with rain and snow over the Aleutians. And for tonight, you can see that low, actually the original low there, that's south of Nunivak Island, that moves northward and weakens into a trough. As you can see, snow and blowing snow blizzard conditions, winter storm warnings, Yukon Delta into lower Yukon Valley, Norton Bay, and back in towards St. Lawrence Island. So the 67 mile an hour wind gusts that Shaktoolik River had there just east of Norton Bay in the hills there, about 1,800 feet, those will continue in through tonight. And look for snow mostly occurring on the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, maybe some in Cook Inlet, but a high wind warning out again for the higher elevations, Anchorage, Turnagain Arm, Kenai Peninsula, with strong winds coming into the North Gulf Coast. In fact, hurricane force wind warnings are out for the eastern North Gulf Coast for tomorrow. And also for Prince William Sound, sustained winds in the Sound tomorrow, 65 knots out of the east or east-southeast, and east 70 knots in the forecast for the eastern North Gulf Coast around Middleton Island, sustained. And I've never seen a hurricane force wind warning out for Prince William Sound. Maybe I just missed it, but this definitely 2 days going now with one in there for tomorrow. And wind and rain will be increasing, slowly edging eastward toward the Panhandle. It should stay dry. Look for an increase in the clouds with an increase in the winds, mostly on the north coast throughout the day. Large low out over the Bering Sea keeps it windy and unsettled out there. Rain or snow over the southern areas, snow in the north there. Diminishing in the afternoon for the Yukon Delta, but grazing the northwest coast. And then for Wednesday, we've got gale force easterlies for the Arctic coast on Wednesday throughout the day, so that will result in some blowing snow and a little bit of new snow falling up there as well, but nothing too heavy, kind of the moisture lifting northward up to that area, kind of colliding with the Arctic air mass holding over the Arctic. And so that's going to keep the gale force winds going there. Much lighter winds over southern Alaska. You can see south central Alaska, weak trough, much lighter winds, and just some scattered snow showers. And rain and snow, that front really weakening as it pushes into the Panhandle. Looks like strongest winds by the afternoon will actually be down over Dixon Entrance up toward the southern Panhandle. But you can see the gradient really about gone with that. In the center, very weak there near Yakutat. And then a break over the central Aleutians, and out to the west, the next fronts bringing some rain and snow in, and not much of an increase in the winds, not much of a factor with that next system coming in. And actually the dual lows there, 1977 millibars, rather respectable pressures there, but the intensity isn't all that great, meaning the gradient isn't all that tight. So winds, maybe small craft advisory level winds with that, maybe a little stronger, at least by the afternoon Wednesday, shouldn't be too bad. With snow showers pretty widespread as a couple of troughs rotate around that low center, pulling colder air back down, snow moving back into the Pribilos or snow showers with maybe northwesterlies 25 to 30 miles an hour, and the southwest interior Yukon Kuskokwim Delta, maybe into the Kuskokwim Valley, but most of those snow showers hanging up along the Kuskokwim Mountains, and snow showers all the way up to the southern slopes of the Western Brooks Range, and dry over the eastern and northern interior, but cooling off a little bit from what we'll see the mid-40s south central Alaska tomorrow. Should be a little bit cooling, bringing the snowfall levels back down to sea level for south, but don't look for a lot of new snow. And for the lows tonight, anywhere from 25 to 45 below for the north slope, and milder though, but still below zero for the central interior north of the Alaska Range. Hit the 0 degree isotherm there from roughly northern Kuskokwim Valley in toward Haisley, over toward Alaska Range, say Nebezna, for example, and mid-20s, low 40 for forecast low for Homer, and 30s for the Panhandle, and 30s for the Aleutians and I'm sorry, upper 20s for the Aleutians, 30s for the Alaska Peninsula. Highs tomorrow, 35 to 40 to 45 on the Kenai Peninsula, so much milder conditions moving in, and above zero for the central Tanana Valley, and even warmer conditions all the way up to the Brooks Range, staying below zero North Slope on the Arctic coast, mid to upper 30s for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians for the highs, and then the lows either side of zero up over the northeast interior, lower 30s to near 40 around Homer for the lows, and then the highs a little bit cooler than tomorrow.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
So we've gone to flying weather for Tuesday morning. VFR, Arctic coast, North Slope, and eastern interior there across the Brooks Range into the central interior to get down to the Alaska Range. Mostly VFR to start for the Copper River Basin with some marginal VFR over the western area there to the Alaska Range. IFR, western Alaska Range, on down to Kodiak Island, then back across southern Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast. Marginal VFR, most of the Panhandle, except from about Port Alexander down across Prince of Wales Island, looks VFR. And a couple of areas of IFR there from the northwest coast across the Seward Peninsula into the Yukon Delta, Nunivak Island, and then the other one farther to the southwest. Otherwise, marginal VFR for the remainder of the Bering Sea and the Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula. For the afternoon, IFR central Bering Sea right around the Pribilos, but north of the Aleutians, and some IFR lingering for St. Lawrence Island and the western Arctic coast, west of Wainwright on down to the Yukon Delta, all marginal, and some VFR for the Kuskokwim Delta, and IFR there, southern Kuskokwim Valley to Iliamna Lake, and then persisting IFR for the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range. Becomes pretty widespread over southern Cook Inlet to eastern Kodiak Island, all the Gulf of Alaska, North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, on up into east side of Turnagain Arm, Portage Valley area, look IFR. And that extends in across the Yakutat area and Elfin Cove in the northern Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay areas, but VFR, southern Panhandle. And for the day on Wednesday, IFR rolls into all of the southeast coast by Wednesday morning, and also covers the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, Cook Inlet south of the Forelands, but possibly the western Susitna Valley and the western Alaska Range, Kuskokwim Valley, IFR, on northwest across Norton Sound, and marginal for the Seward Peninsula, and an area of IFR over the central Bering Sea or east central Bering Sea, just north of the Fox Islands there, covering the Pribilos, marginal for the Aleutians, and maybe some IFR for the western St. Lawrence Island area, VFR, Arctic coast, into the central eastern interior, and even a ways south of the Alaska Range, but not too far. And for the afternoon, we've got areas of marginal VFR along with some scattered areas of VFR, especially the east side there for the interior. IFR from the central interior back west across Norton Sound and at least most of the Seward Peninsula, Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island. And IFR persists there for the southwest coast and just grazing the Pribilofs. Otherwise marginal for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, and some VFR breaking out for the Alaska Peninsula. VFR for Kodiak Island, northern Cook Inlet, VFR. IFR, Prince William Sound, on down central and eastern Panhandle. Passes, Anatuvik, VFR tomorrow. Good VFR also for Adigan. Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR, especially on the eastern entrances. Better, though, on the western side into the Kuskokwim Valley. And for Rainy, IFR eastern approach, marginal for the pass itself. Windy, marginal VFR with VFR out the northern entrance of the Tanana Valley. And Isabel, marginal VFR, about sums it up for the day on Tuesday. And for Mentasta, marginal VFR, southern entrance, VFR through the pass and to the north. And for Tanita, marginal VFR with IFR increasing. Best chance of that would be on the eastern approach. And for Portage, solid IFR throughout the day. Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR trends toward IFR during the morning hours through the afternoon. Freezing levels at the surface there north of the Pribilofs, but down south of the western Aleutians there from about Kiska westward, 2,000 feet, nudged up into the Barren Islands there across Kodiak Island. And for icing, considerable moderate rime icing up into the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, eastern Kenai Peninsula, and up along the western Alaska Range there, more or less, and another batch moving northeastward there. That's south of the Gulf of Alaska, and icing of a lesser threat out over the Aleutians and the southern central Bering Sea. Taking a look at the jet stream, upper level ridging, trying to developing over the southeast interior there. So we've got southeast flow 65 to 100 knots there up the west side, another branch kind of splitting, cutting underneath there, heading in toward the Queen Charlottes, and at 9,000 feet, 65 to 90 knot winds, southern Alaska, 3,075 knotters right across the Gulf into the Prince William Sound area. That would be accompanied by severe turbulence from the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, otherwise light tides to moderate chop for the southeast interior.
Hello again, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder with the National Weather Service with another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. And joining me today are not just one, but two people, both with the last name Stevens, which is even more fun, but no relation. We have Eric Stevens from Gina and George Stevens, who is a mechanical engineering student from the University of Alaska, Fairbanks. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Awesome. And today you guys brought a really cool toy, or I should say tool, with you. It's a sandbox, but why are you guys working on a sandbox?
Well, it's part of our senior design project, and we were approached by EPSCoR to build this for them. They had a proof of concept that they developed about a year ago, I think, and they wanted a more robust version that they could pack onto a plane and take places, and it's a handy learning tool for kids and adults.
So you're a mechanical engineering student. You've built a traveling sandbox for the experimental program to stimulate competitive research, EPSCoR, and Gina's facilitated this. But why do we need a traveling sandbox?
Well, the prototype was such a big hit that they decided they wanted another one, actually two, that they could that would be easier to travel with. You know, possibly marketable even.
Okay, so this is a traveling sandbox that's got a lot of bits and pieces and a computer hooked up to it. What is the computer doing with the sand?
The computer actually uses a Kinect sensor to read the topography of the sand or the shape of the sand, and then the computer translates that into information which it projects using a projector onto the sand, showing topographical lines and which is representative of the shape of the sand.
Okay, so this is a live mapping tool?
Yeah. It's interactive. As you're moving your hands through it, it is actively following and changing the lines to fit what you're doing.
That sounds like something I could have in my backyard.
Yep.
It'd be a lot of fun. So you guys had to change the design a little bit to make this more Alaska-fied, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, how'd you do that?
Well, the original was made out of basically lumber and Simpson strong tie type stuff, and we rebuilt it to make it lighter and basically more transportable. We can pack it down to a fairly small size, and it can be loaded onto a plane and flown anywhere in the state.
Which you guys did today. And you have plans to take this in other places of Alaska, right?
Yep, we're actually going to be headed down to Homer with it later today.
Okay, very good. Eric, how does this fit into science learning around Alaska?
Well, you know what? I think it is a tool and it is a toy. And it brings out a smile from an 8-year-old and the smile from a 48-year-old with that inner 8-year-old wanting to get out. The sandbox, it's an interactive learning tool that teaches us how topography in the 3 dimensions is related to, say, a 2-dimensional map. More about that later. Just like George was saying, it's got a Kinect sensor, not just for video games anymore. It can sense out the lay of the land there, feeds that information in the computer. The computer identifies that, sends a signal to a projector to send topographic lines to map over that lumpy ground. So you get a 3-dimensional topo map out of it. And my favorite thing about it, this is the thing that stops people at the trade show, they stop at your booth and don't leave, is that you run your hand through that sandbox and it responds in real time. It remaps the topography as you get to be Mr. Tectonic Plate Drifter there. You can make things how you want. Well, what if we made a really high mountain here and a low valley there, and the lines adjust to what you did? It's a learning tool because it shows you that connection between these 2-dimensional topo lines and what's really out in Alaska. And Alaska's a place with all kinds of topography. You know, we're from the Great Plains, where topo maps tend to be just like blank pieces of paper. But Alaska is particularly gifted in this regard, and this tool helps us, I think, learn more about our state, really.
Absolutely. And so this is going to enhance STEM learning, the science, technology, engineering, and math, in many different locations around Alaska. Then this would be something that kids and teachers can get their hands on.
Mm-hmm. It sure is. And I mentioned the it's like flypaper at a booth that, or at the Science Potpourri when we had Greg's original version of this sandbox, and that one was made out of scraps of wood, and it was a prototype. But even that one, before it had some of the refinements that George and crew have made for this newer, upscaled, maybe a 2.0 version of the sandbox, even that one was so attractive to people. It just demonstrated that this has potential to be a learning tool, an outreach tool, an education tool that now is portable and can go places in Alaska. Of course, there's only one sandbox, can't be everywhere at once, but hopefully it gets out there, gets the word out about EPSCoR and what science is being done here for Alaskans.
All right, that sounds really interesting, and I can't wait to get my hands in the sand and try this out for myself. We're going to demonstrate this here in our next segment of Alaska Weather Facts, but before we go, we want to remind you that EPSCoR, which is a new acronym for me now, but I'm going to remember this because you can follow them on Facebook and Twitter, and I invite you to do that. Alaska EPSCoR is also something that facilitates science learning at the University of Alaska around the state, and that stands for Experimental Program to Stimulate Competitive Research. So check that out, and make sure you tune in tomorrow because we're going to have the next version where we actually get our hands in the sand and check out how this works and demonstrates that topography. So for now, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder with this edition of Alaska Weather Facts, and we'll see you again next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis with that low center tracking up the southwest coast there. It's kind of already started with the southerly winds to melt back and compress northward there, Bristol Bay and mostly Nunivak Island into the and southward there along the coast. And eventually even along the Yukon Delta coast, we'll start to see some ice melt back there with the systems and more southerly flow the next couple of days. But probably St. Lawrence Island and that area to the Bering Strait, that'll actually be easterly flow, so that area will continue to advance westward a little bit, at least the way it looks at this point in time. Anyway, going on to the coastal water forecast, gales all along the southeast coast tomorrow, 40 knots out of the southeast on the south coast, 45 knots out of the southeast on the north coast, and then southerlies 25 with gale force gusts for Lynn Canal, southeast 25 with gale force gust of 40 knots for Stevens Passage, and small craft advisories for Clarence Strait, sustained 25 knot southeast winds. Outlook for Wednesday, south coast there, Prince of Wales Island, south 40 knots, gales continue there with 26-foot seas. Also full gales are in the forecast for Clarence Strait out of the southeast, 40 knots, 13-foot seas. Small craft advisories for the central and northern inside waters. For south to southeast winds, 30 knots, 6-foot seas. West 30 knots on the central coast with 23-foot seas, and then 15 there farther to the north from the south, and then back up to 25 knots from the southwest with seas running about 25 feet for the north coast. And for the Prince William Sound area, still holding on to that hurricane force wind warning, 65 knots sustained in the forecast for the Sound, with seas up to 15 feet. And then we've got hurricane force wind warnings for the eastern North Gulf Coast for southeast, 70 knots with 30-foot seas. Otherwise, just storm warnings there for the western North Gulf Coast at 50 knots and 45-knot high-end gales there, Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay from the southeast. And gales for southern Cook Inlet, or gales for all of Cook Inlet, 40 knots south of the Forelands, north side there, 35 knots, both out of the east. Outlook for Wednesday, small craft advisories now for Cook Inlet, south to southwest, 25 knots, seas 8 to 9 feet. Kamishak Bay down to 25 knots from the south. Southwest 30-knot winds for the Barren Islands, western North Gulf Coast, seas in the lower 20s, and south 30 knots now. So a big drop-off in the winds for Wednesday for the North Gulf Coast and Prince William Sound, back down to sustained 30-knot southerlies with seas subsiding to 7 feet. And for Kodiak Island, small craft advisories south 25 to 30 knots, and southwest 20 knots from Skinnack to Castle Cape, and then small craft advisories for the Alaska Peninsula, south to southwest 30 knots, seas 11 to 20 feet, highest on the Pacific side of the peninsula. Small craft advisories for Bristol Bay, south winds 25 knots with 5-foot seas. And then for Wednesday, we've got southwest 30 to 35 knots, strongest on the Pacific side for the Alaska Peninsula. Small craft advisories, Bristol Bay, southwest 25. Same thing for Shelikof Strait, southwest 30 knot winds from Castle Cape to Sitkinak and up the east side of Kodiak Island. For the Fox Islands, west-southwest, 30 to 40 knots tomorrow, seas running 19 to 23 feet. And then we've got 45 knot gales on the Bering Sea side of the Adak-Atka Islands and 30 knots on the Pacific side, both from the west, northwest 30 knots, Amchitka to Shimei and Attu. And then it turns southwest at 30 knots from Shimei to Amchitka, west 30 knots for Adak and Atka, west 30 knots for Unmak Island, west 30 to 35 knots, so throw some gales there for Unalaska Island with 18-foot seas. For the southwest coast tomorrow, 30 knot winds, southeasterlies there with seas up to 9 feet south of Nunivak Island, south 30 knots for the Pribilofs and St. Matthew Island, and gales there for St. Lawrence Island, southeast 35, even stronger, Norton Sound, gales, easterlies, 40 knots. And then for Wednesday, south 15, big drop off in the winds there for the Sound, and 20 knots, St. Lawrence Island, northeast 30 knots for the Yukon Delta coast, southwest gales for blowing right into Kuskokwim Bay, and west 30 for the Pribilofs and St. Matthew Island. For the Arctic coast, central and east side, east 30 knots, good for brisk wind advisories. Gales on the west side all the way down to Wales, east-northeast 40 to 45 knots. Wednesday, gales all along the Arctic coast there at 35 knots out of the east, turning northeast there and diminishing a little bit there around the Capes, and then 15 knots from Cape Thompson to Wales. And for tonight, a weakening front kind of swings up there, but that kicks the winds up. We've got blizzard warnings out for the Yukon Delta and watches, winter storms, all kinds of stuff going on. A high wind warning, Alaska Range and Anchorage and Turnagain Arm with heavy wind and rain moving slowly eastward.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.